Hello.
What's up, man?
What's going on? Did you see me playing with my stick? Did you see it or did you just join it? I didn't have my headphones.
Just joined.
You should demonstrate again.
How about I demonstrate with my little Sharpie pen? No, I'll do it.
Yeah, not nearly as effective.
Do it, do it, do it, do it. Ding, 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 ding.
If you follow Ben, you're gonna see stuff like that all the time.
That's an incredible display of skill, Reuben, but if you're less coordinated, you would destroy your computer.
Yeah, I almost took out my plan earlier.
It's just part of the chaos, man.
Mm.
Yeah. Failure's part of it.
It is.
That's a good segue, man. So Zach said earlier that Kobe Bryant has missed more shots than anybody. How many tackles do you think you missed in your career, bro?
Oh, geez. I'm not gonna lie, not that much.
Not that much. You're right. We're talking to a pro athlete here. This dude knows how to tackle people. Maybe not the best example. And we can get to personal failures after I outline kind of our 3 elements to failing successfully. Right. So the first one we outlined was safe practice, and then defining our goals would be second, and then third to that is just expecting some sort of transformative change. And we can get into more detail as we go, but where does that send your mind when I say those 3 things?
Well,
go ahead.
It's a simple thing, and like most simple things, they're usually the quickest thing to be forgotten. And I feel like the 3 things that you mentioned are what most people are missing in their personal practice, be it movement based, be it video gaming, be it any endeavor that they're undertaking to develop skill. They're lacking one, if not all 3 of those elements in their planning.
Mm-hmm.
Most definitely. Zach, what do you think?
I mean, failure is inevitable. Just before this meeting, Reuben and I were supposed to be recording a podcast, and it turned out that I was not recording. So we had this wonderful, eloquent conversation about failure, full of nuance. It was oh, come on. It was great. And now only his plant heard it. So
yeah, the ether has it now, like we said before. But I want to start with the safe practice part, and understanding that failure is inevitable if we just want to live and do things. And if we have that as part of our range of expectations, it makes us more rational as human beings. So we move from these like low risk settings or these practice settings. Ben, I see you in those settings all the time around your house. But then if you move to more of a high risk setting, like let's say defending yourself or going out and performing on stage, that would require a different set of tasks or a different procedure. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's very true. That's also one of the things that when I will critique the movement industry in general, I'll say that most people are developing their practice only within safety. So only within controlled ranges, only within specific movements and move sets. But the games that are being prepared for, in essence, are chaos, right? Like the game of football, for example. People will train in a straight line, but the game will take you anywhere and have someone falling on you in an awkward position while you're in the middle of trying to do one of your perfect moves that you trained for. So it's unrealistic. You got to expose yourself to a greater range of adversity in order to actually, I would say, prove and improve your skill set.
That's beautiful. The game is chaos.
Yeah, safe practice is about risk management. People learn iteratively. So at the beginning, they're going to do something and they're not going to do it right. There are going to be some consequences to not doing it right. And we just want to make sure that it's not catastrophic. Now,
Yes.
you also understand that risk and reward are related. There's a
Hmm.
correlation there. May not be perfect, but usually the higher the risk, the higher the reward. That's why being a
Hmm.
professional NFL player can be so rewarding. Like you are putting your life, maybe some exaggeration, but you are putting your life in jeopardy just by stepping on that field and allowing yourself to be tackled by a 300-pound monster of an athlete, right?
Hmm.
So you just want to make sure you're doing everything right. Like you know how to safely take a tackle, you know how to safely catch a ball and run and everything else. And you're going to have to do that in a safer environment where you can manage that risk. But as you've also noted, the real thing is chaotic. There's a lot of variables that cannot be controlled.
Yes.
So even in your practice, you have to start introducing higher and higher amounts of risk. That's necessary to force you to adapt and be more competitive, more athletic, more impressive.
Hell yeah, man. That's a great point. It's like this theory is that if someone only ever read about the African jungle in a book, they would have some great understanding. They would know what sort of safety protocols to undertake, but they wouldn't have the experience of actually going out there and seeing a lion 10 feet away from them. They're not going to be prepared for the butterflies and the fight or flight and all those kind of things. So, in essence, they're going to be not as prepared as someone who's lived there but never studied it, because they know those sort of, okay, it's game time things, here's what I have to do. You know what I'm saying? So in order to get people better with that, it would be wise to incorporate some aspects of that into the training so that you have a controlled, chaotic sort of environment instead of only control and then being fed to the wolves in chaos.
Mhm. What do you think about
Most definitely. I think it takes us to point number two in goal definition. Is like you have to say, I want to go to that setting that you mentioned, right? It's one thing to read the book that takes you one place in your mind, but you have to state, I want to go do this thing, buy the ticket, take the ride. So
Mm,
the definition of the goal can lead to a higher or lower probability of success or failure. So if you never define
yep.
that you're going to go do that thing, you've already failed because you haven't taken the shot. Everybody's heard that. You miss all the shots you don't take, right? So you
Hmm.
have to define what you want to do and then set that range of expectations from failure to like complete mastery, or I've went above and beyond even the goal that I've set for myself. So how do you do that personally? How have you done that in the past to get where you've gone? Because you played in the Canadian Football League for how many years?
I played for 5 years.
That's impressive. If anybody knows football, and what that does to somebody's body or what that takes, going from playing pee wee football to 5 years in a professional league, that is a lot of time, a lot of commitment, a lot of sacrifice, and you can get into that. I'll let you speak now.
Yeah, that's a good point, because a lot of people, they only see someone once they hit the pro stages. But for
Mm.
example, I retired when I was 27, but I started playing football when I was 9 years old. So you're making an investment, like you're talking about. You're defining the goal when you're a child, and then if you do, like, pure chaos is just as bad as pure control. So if you don't define the goal, if I didn't say this is what I want to do, then I never would have taken the steps to get there, right? So it's like I utilized the adaptive methods, the adaptive mindset, the warrior spirit, to help eventually get me to that goal of making it into the professional ranks.
hmm how you define a goal determines whether an outcome is a success or failure. Here's an example. If you define the goal as making a basketball shot, then if you don't make that basketball shot, that's a failure. However, if you define the goal as just attempting a shot, if you attempt a shot, whether you make it or not is irrelevant. You have already succeeded. So
Mhm.
it turns out that you can define a goal in such a way that it's impossible for you to succeed, and then that can have an unhealthy effect on your development as a person, as an athlete, and so on. Or you can define the goal so that it's incredibly easy to succeed. My question for you is, how should you define the goal? How hard should it be? And it seems like, given your affinity for being a warrior, you'd want the goal to be as difficult as possible while still being achievable.
Yes. It's like undertaking a mission, or if you're looking at the military, is that you assess risk before going in or undertaking the endeavor. So if there's too many risks, if there's too many cons, regardless of the challenge, if it's too much, you don't take that risk. But when it's something that, okay, based on my skill set, based on the way that I have developed myself and then proven and tested myself against other combatants, or, in accomplishing and overcoming other challenges, how can I undertake this one? Is it something that, with my skill set, with what I've developed, I can define this goal as, okay, this is a worthwhile endeavor. The risk is worth, undertaking for the reward. Can I do it? Let's do it. So there's still this sort of weighing of risk versus reward as you're talking about. And for me, I would say defining a goal is that you're going back to old school. You're going back to like elementary school, and you're mind mapping. You're brainwashing. Brainwashing. You're basically brainwashing yourself, though, because you're making a spread map of, here's the possible things that I could do to get there. Here's how I want to get there, and here's how I'm going to get there. So then, in essence, you're brainwashing yourself with this goal, with this endeavor, and utilizing all the things on your spread that you've created for yourself to help get it done.
Mm-hmm.
That's funny because a mentor of mine who's had a profound impact on my life, will say that, had a video series for his students and his clients called Brainwashing for Success. And a lot of it was based on just fundamental psychology that, if you applied it and you applied it with the correct context and had the right understanding, was super powerful within your life. So that's why I did this. But we are expecting this transformative change, and the first two get us to that third one, right?
Yeah.
We define the goal. We understand strategies and tactics to employ. We understand that we will fall, we'll get back up, we'll keep going. And that in itself is transformative. From that baseline understanding, you take it even further. In what other ways is this thing that I'm doing changing me, for better or for worse? So how can people who are listening, what's the secret sauce, man, that you would, what's my $89.99, 3 payments, I'll give you my sauce statement.
The secret sauce is exposing yourself to failure, because you don't ever attain any experience or the skills necessary to do anything monumental, from playing the piano to being the world's best anything, if you don't fail. Because the big problem with a lot of systems is that they plateau because there are no variables that enter in to keep it alive. Like, this is the formula of life, is that there are holding factors. There's the same 4 seasons every year. But within those seasons, there's always variables. Okay, last year it was 21 degrees on this day. This year it's 15 degrees. So if you employ those things like nature does into your method, your standardized method for yourself, and then create changes that will always give you new stimulus on top of the strong foundations that keep you going, then that'll keep you on a curve that's rising. You never stop growing, you never stop improving, and then that makes it so that you're constantly working towards chipping away at that goal. So that's like my secret sauce, is that you create the strong foundations that you need, but you always have to have sort of chaotic variables, things that are forcing you to constantly adapt and learn and grow.
There's layers to the flavor of your sauce, man. There's levels. Go ahead, Zach.
I'm going to reiterate that and express it in my own words, because I think that's going to help me understand it better. And I also feel like I have a similar viewpoint. I believe what you're essentially saying is that you need to develop first a skill set in order to just survive. And then you need to be in a position where failure is a possibility, because that means that you're being subjected to stimulus that will force you to adapt and grow stronger. Adaptation is the name of the game here. We know that's part of evolution. So if you want to evolve from where you are to a better version of you, then you're just going to have to be in a position where failure is a possibility. Now, Ruben likes the phrase transformative change. I like the phrase progressive change.
Mhm.
And I started with progressive because I envision sort of an iterative process. It's like
Mhm.
you attempt something, you fail, you learn something from the failure, you try again, you might still fail, but you fail a little bit less. And this happens over and over and over again until you finally achieve your goal. That's a progressive change, and it's like layers stacking on top of each other. And at some point, the cumulative change is noticeable to everyone, not only you, but also to anyone else. And that's when the transformation is clear. Um, I was wondering if you could, provide some more examples about like failure in your life and how you've used it to be successful.
Absolutely, man. I've failed a ton, so I didn't always fail necessarily on the field, but in my own practice, I would equate it to injuries, because injuries will take away your time on the field and also inhibit performance, even if you can play through them, right? So it forces you to learn to move differently, right? To eat differently. It basically, if you go, I see it so much in college players in the States once they get drafted into the NFL and they never get hurt. And then all of a sudden they get a major injury in the NFL, and just the way that they react to the pain, and they're like thriving, writhing on the ground, they're just rolling around, look like a bunch of little kids. And then a lot of times they don't ever bounce back. So I would say I'm grateful in that I got injured a ton, and from that it challenges everything that you thought you knew about yourself or how good you were. It attacks your mind, it attacks everything, because the interesting thing about injuries is that once you get them, you don't really remember what it's like before you had the injury. It becomes your focusing point, and then for some people, it wrecks them, they're done. But for others like myself, you use it to become better. You start to, okay, why did that injury happen? How did it happen? What can I do in my control to change it so that it doesn't happen again? And wow, what is this morsel of knowledge that I've learned from the injury that has actually made me better? So it's kind of like playing Mario. Simple thing. You play the level again and again, and you might keep falling down that same pit in that hole, but you attack it differently the next time. And then you move better, and then eventually you pass all the challenges and you beat the level of Mario. So that's like kind of like injuries. The injury is falling down that pit, and then it's like, well, what are you going to do about it the next time? How are you going to attack it differently?
Mhm.
It seems like we're making this comparison to like video games or a simulation a lot. And,
Mm-hmm.
you could sit here and have a fun conversation about whether life is a video game. But for now, if we just use it as an analogy, it's a
Mm-hmm.
good one because those checkpoints or those levels progressively get more difficult, right?
Yeah.
But
Yep.
the game creator has set that up for you, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
you interact with it. Um, how do you now become the game creator of your own game when you're not playing video games, to ensure that that happens so that we go from low risk, right, to
Mm-hmm.
high risk? How do we organize our daily video game and then the one big one?
That's a good one. Just as you mentioned, the more levels you play, the harder it gets. So that means that the stimulus that you have to do. I was talking to my friend Izzy last week, and we basically said that play is the equivalent of being able to communicate with life, because the nature of life is play. So when you train yourself in a playful way, you're preparing yourself as best as you can for the unknowable that life is going to throw at you. So the more that you throw things that are, I would say, outside of the box at yourself in your training, be it mental, physical, spiritual, whatever, that is one of the better ways to prepare yourself for what life is going to throw at you. So drills that are a control factor, be it a ball, an object like your stick, and then you get yourself into it by doing a foundational move, like just getting it flowing. But then eventually you add in variables. Maybe someone throws a ball at you while you're doing that foundational move, or maybe you're doing something balancing on one leg while trying to do the same thing. So that would be the equivalent of adding in variables to your control factors to give you sort of that playful understanding of the nature of life. And basically whatever it's going to throw at you, you're not going to know. It's unknowable. You'll know after it happens, but going into it, you don't have much of an idea.
So if we're going to say that there's a box and we're thinking
Yeah.
outside of said box, we
Yeah.
had to define said box beforehand. And we talked about defining goals and defining our set and setting with practice and being self-aware to have progressive or transformative changes. That's our box, right?
Yeah.
If you have to have a box, that's the box. And then getting outside of it, you don't even necessarily have to take steps. If you just keep moving forward and living, maybe your box just expands. And now
Yeah.
what would have been outside the box is within the box. And then you do that enough and there's no box.
That's genius. Yeah.
Zach, what do you have to say? Because I think you have some personal applications to this as well. I know you do.
Yeah, I want to respond to several points made by both of you. I like injury as an example of failure because it's palpable and clear. Most people, they can't recognize failure unless it slaps them across the face. That's why they refuse to change and they refuse to grow. They just look at something and they say, "Oh, that's not my fault. I'm not accountable for it. I'm not responsible for it. It's not a personal failing." However, if your arm is broken, because someone tackled you, you're forced to look at that real hard and say, "Well, what can I do next time so it doesn't happen again?" And you don't really care about whether it's his fault or your fault. You just want to make sure it never happens again. And that is a strong motivation to be better. I really like that. And maybe that's how people should approach failure in general. It's like, stop trying to blame this or that, but see what you can do to have agency over your own life, to have more influence over what happens to you, because chances are you probably can affect things. And that helps me segue into the next point, which is Reuben was talking about simulations and video games. Now, we can't change the fundamental nature of reality. Law of gravity exists, chemistry exists, can't really alter either of those. But still, we can develop almost like skill expression. We can learn how to master these rules and these laws so that we can like manifest our will more precisely, more creatively, more freely. And when you get really good at that, that's when it almost seems like you have control over the world. Like Elon Musk is an example. It's like he has this incredible knowledge of just pretty much every field of engineering, of science, of marketing, of persuasion, and it's this knowledge and his skill set that enables him to make it seem like everything bends around him, just like falls in his lap. But I'm sure that's not something that came naturally to him. I'm almost certain that it's something he had to develop over a long period of time through hard and extensive effort. Uh, I'm
He's been playing the video game well. You could say that, and he and others like him um, are able to define their goals. People can go back and listen to the SMART goals episodes. He does that really, really well, so well now that it's just built into him. He sleeps in his conference room. I'm sure it's a really nice conference room, but he sleeps there, works like hundreds of hours a week. And that is the only way that you can expand the box, like I was saying. He thinks outside of the box so much that the box becomes bigger. And now that thing is no longer outside the box. He takes things from this AM FM principle. So like actually makeable to fucking magic. So he looks at FM and he's like, how can I get it to the AM side? Whether it's digging tunnels under cities or sending a car with an astronaut in it up to Mars and past it, right? Or he joked about nuking the atmosphere of Mars in order to terraform it. Like, dude's mind is just so far outside the box that the box went away.
And this is the last point I'll make, and someone else can, take over. I'm a pretty big fan of esports, electronic sports. So I watch a lot of professional video game players, and they like to do something called limit testing. Limit testing is when you play the game in the most risky and aggressive way just to see what would happen. We said that there's this correlation between risk and reward. Usually, if you play in this highly risky way, there is some kind of payoff. So they're trying to see how far they can go before everything falls apart. And if they can be at that very threshold, they have a competitive advantage over everyone else because they're playing that much better, that much faster, that much more intensely, and then that can be the margin of victory a lot of times. So we can do that ourselves. We can safely practice so that we develop basic competence and then gradually expose ourselves to more risk, more chaos until we're just these badasses that are demolishing everything in front of us and terraforming Mars.
So Dr. Huberman, who I've brought up many times and will continue to because he's awesome, in his laboratory, they have different tests using virtual reality where they find someone's capacity, and they've had Navy SEALs, Army Rangers, genius IQ folks come in and do these tests, and everyone eventually reaches their limit, right? They have a capacity that is now established as baseline, and then they can try to improve it. So they're learning so much about human operating systems through finding limits to it. Just like the artificially intelligent operating system finds its limit, it fails millions and millions of times so that it can find the successful route. So we established in the last episode how humans and robots, or humans and computers, are similar, and that's one way, is that this simulation or this computer video game, for example, is a box, right? But we don't get to see the whole box. We're navigating pieces of it and parts of it. More advanced video games create that as you go, which is really cool to see. But we establish this map for ourselves, and then we have specific plans to navigate the map. That's Tony Robbins. He's like, business plan, mission plan. It's like, you need a map. Have a map, know all the things that you might run into, everything that might trip you up. Where's the quicksand? Where's the moat? Where's the mountain you have to climb? And then you have specific strategies, tasks, plans to navigate that map. Do you have your compass? Do you have a sailboat? If so, are the conditions correct to sail? Where does that kind of take your mind next? Either of you?
Welcome to my world, gentlemen.
Yeah, man. That's why I wanted to have you on, bro. Like, I knew you'd have a lot of ideas for this. I don't. Do you want to talk maybe about what's the most significant injury you've had? I know you've shared with your audience, like, some of the things that you use to recover from that, which is transformative.
Yeah, it's if you want to talk about exploring the limits of the game that you're in, that's what I feel like I do and have done for a living, is pushing things as far as they can go. And then by doing that, you redefine the game. You redefine your limits every time. It's like working out. You scar your cellular tissue, you break it down, and then the limits that you previously had are destroyed, and now you can do more and push further. So, that's what I do. So with my personal stuff, I'll freaking test the shit out of my nervous system to heal injuries that normally require like life-altering surgery or, things like that. I'm playing around with a bunch of stuff, and, like I'm fixing my spinal cord, which, I'm doing all these different things that aren't really supposed to be possible by yourself, just by being like, well, what can I do? What can I come up with? And I'll just jiggle the shit out of my leg to the point that I'm sweating and I could barely see straight. And, I'm creating a new pathway. You're talking about the map. I'm creating a map for my nerves and giving them new things to do. Because when you're creating a new pattern for yourself, you create new neurons. Anytime you're doing something new neurons come, and then they create a little stream of connectivity to each other. And then the more you do that thing, the stronger the connection, the quicker the synapse. And then from that, you can grow and add layers. So, just from like we're talking about shaking, I just shake the shit out of stuff sometimes and accomplish some amazing things. I'm redefining my game.
what is the feeling that you feel within your body or your mind or collectively when you know that that thing is right? You
Have you ever
understand?
sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, a message came up that we were going to be limited, but we're not. But I explain it to some people as like, okay, I feel it in my heart or my belly first, and then it does something to my face. I either smile or frown or make an emotion, and then like
Yeah.
it comes up here next.
Mhm.
Can you relate to that?
You remember Doc Brown's reaction in Back to the Future, the 1.21 gigawatts?
Yeah,
1.21 gigawatts, Marty! You know, I get like a euphoric child, like, yes, I'm on it, yeah! Bzz, 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 you know, it's like being struck by lightning is how I'd say it happens for me.
that's powerful. I feel in a similar way. Zach, can you relate to that?
I want to disclaim that I'm not a doctor, so I can't verify any of the statements of facts made here. But
Disclaimer. Thank you for
I don't
bringing
know if any,
your
Yes.
legal mind, your
We
litigious
are
mind to the
legally
conversation.
safe in this podcast.
but
Yeah, awesome.
I will say that it's possible for people to experiment independently and discover radical and revolutionary things. I think Albert Einstein might be an example of that because he was like a,
Definitely.
just a patent examiner, and he discovered all these amazing equations that revolutionized quantum physics, or maybe it was just physics. Maybe it's both. So the point is that like I don't know anything that Benjamin is testing, but it's highly possible that it could be groundbreaking. Like it's helping him. It could help other people. I'm not going to like doubt any of that. I don't see any reason to at the moment. Anyways, it's yeah. People should put themselves in a position to fail. I think it's worthwhile to experiment. And like, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? That your investment fails? That all this time and energy that you spent exploring this or that idea is not going to result in anything? I mean, even that's not true, because if you test something and the outcome is that it doesn't work, at least you know that it doesn't work. And next time you can try something different, and that's going to have a better probability of being effective. It's like, I think the saying is that Thomas Edison had to uh, make 1,000 designs of the light bulb before he had one that was profitable, before he had one that was good. And returning to Kobe Bryant, he's missed more shots than he made, or he's missed more shots than everyone else. And the point is that if you want to succeed, you have to fail. It's inevitable. It's part of the process. So yeah, just fail, but make sure you don't make the same mistake twice. Constantly grow, and then don't interpret failure so negatively. Don't think of it as this permanent and serious condemnation of who you are. If anything, like, your capacity to withstand failure is a testament to your character as a human being. It really shows how strong you are.
When we're making this transformative journey like that, doing the same thing over and over again is not the same thing if you keep winning games. And what I mean by that is defining your goal and your range of expectations, like we talked about. The same thing over and over again doesn't have to be the definition of insanity. It really doesn't, because there are things that require 10,000 kicks, right? Bruce Lee, 10,000 hour rule. You have to practice these things so many times that it becomes autonomous, and then it's just you. Even the things that we do, let's say going to the bathroom, like at some point in our lives, we had to practice that and develop that set of neural connections that, not only taught us how to do it, but to, understand why it's important to do it. That one's pretty easy. You don't want to, poop your pants. But that is a very basic thing that we do as human beings that this still applies to. So if it applies to pooping, I think it can apply to all the things that you want that are on your goal list. And this video game analogy is so fun, and we could keep taking it further. We talked about how computers are like these series of inputs and then computations and then outputs. Ben, how can you improve that simple process? In, compute, out.
I actually got to make a closing statement because my kids are freaking out. But I'm gonna leave you on this one. Is that when it comes to failure, and then I'll get to your question or your piece. The joy, I guess, and the ease that people could have in it is that in any single thing that you undertake in your life, whether it be from taking the fork with food on it to your mouth to catapulting yourself into, space in a vehicle, is that you can fail. You might miss. There's no guarantees that it's ever going to work. You can plan and plan and plan and do the repetition a million times, and there's still no guarantees that the food is going to hit your mouth, or you're in fact going to get to Venus, or wherever it is. So if people take that concept and apply that to anything that they're doing, then they'll be able to stop fearing the boogeyman of failure and being like, okay, how do I assess this and make it work for me? And then this now is going to answer your question. And then it's like, whatever the endeavor it is that you're undertaking, if it's not worth the risk, if it's not worth testing that and knowing that you may fail, then don't do it. But if you take all that in your mind and know that you could fail, you could hurt yourself, you could get injured, you could monumentously overcome and become a champion and achieve, and and that doesn't stop you, then fucking do it. Think about all that. Yeah, you're gonna fail no matter what you do. There's no success rate 100%. You will fail along the way. Is it worth it?
That was beautiful, brother.
You guys
I like
are
the fist. I like the fist. I like the fist better. So are you, man.
Yeah, we really enjoy having you on this podcast.
I really loved both of your perspectives on things. Like, I was sitting there, I don't know if you could see my video when you guys are talking, but I'm smiling because I'm like, these guys are on to something, man. These guys are drinking the cosmic juice.
We're turning over the right stones, as you said months ago, before I had my hermetic break from Instagram. That was fun.
Hey, man, you got to do it.
I talk to myself a lot. I talked to myself so much that I got bored with what I was saying, and my brain was like, yeah, go talk to other people now because you have better stuff to say.
Parallels with that dream, yeah.
Yeah.
Find the cosmic juice at Whole Foods. It's pretty expensive, but what are you going to do?
Screw Whole Foods, man. Yeah. I got a local neighborhood grocer, and then Sam's Club. Sam's Club is phenomenal. No free ads, though, so we're not going to do that.
We were not paid for that drop.
Yeah. All right, Ben, I appreciate you so much. Enjoy your time with your children and your family. Tell all of them that Telos Pod, Reuben and Zach say hello.
Sounds good, man. Later, dudes.
Later, man.
Two more points. How to interpret failure healthily, and then the white belt mentality, or the eternal white belt. I think you might have heard that from Lex Fridman or maybe Joe Rogan. Let's talk a little bit more about that. It's like
Kaizen is another word people may have heard.
I haven't heard that one.
Yeah, it's Kaizen, I believe. Mm-hmm. And it's that I am going to look at this like I am a student. I'm an eternal student, even when I believe I'm a master, right? Because even the masters can now see things from a higher further vantage point, and know that there are things that they still must learn.
Mm-hmm. Right. The question is, how can we interpret failure so that it's productive instead of counterproductive? It's like you want to try to extract as much information from each failure as you can. Notice that if you're failing, that means you're falling short of some goal. If you are off by this much, that difference is actually very significant, and that can help determine your future course of action. That's about the most valuable information anyone can ever give you. How far away are you from the mark? Snipers need that kind of info. If they're aiming at a target a mile down the range and they shoot, they may not even know where their bullet went, and so they need someone to tell them you're so many feet to the left, so many feet down, and then they adjust. you know, correct. And they'll make another attempt. If you're on the mark, that actually gives you like the minimum amount of information because now it's just saying like, well, what do you do? What's your next goal? What's the next step? So if you look at failure as an opportunity to grow, even failure can be a success. It's strange how you can almost inverse the concept like that, but it's very powerful. Now you don't look forward to just success, you look forward to failure too, and every time you make an attempt, you've somehow won. So this is an empowering mindset. It makes it so that you are always motivated to just do something.
Most definitely. Um, and we'll save that idea and bring it up again when we have Patrick Houston on, the Olympic archer, who understands very, very well whether you hit the mark or not, and actually has some experience with that and tools to um, collect data that can give him that exact understanding you mentioned. How far from the goal was he on that particular shot or series of shots in most cases? And looking at that data on the board combined with slow motion video of his mechanics, they can decide these are the um, shapes, or this was the biomechanics that led to the best result. But then you can take it a step further and say, this was the set and setting that was achieved in. This was my physical state, my psychological state, social, contextual parameters, all sorts of different things can be built onto what you said at the start. How far away am I from the mark? But you find that, and then you go and look from other perspectives, and now we can talk forever. We can have a filibuster and freestyle the whole thing, and it lasts 24 hours on a topic. For real, if you start with the right base info and the right 0 point, you can just keep going.
Mhm. And the way I describe success, I almost made it seem like it's less useful than failure. That's not exactly right. But if your desire is to grow, then failure is in fact more informative than success. Because if you succeed, all that tells you is that you need to repeat whatever you did. So you're not changing anything, you're just repeating. But if you're failing, then that's giving you a lot of clues as to how you need to change, how much you need to change, why you need to change, so on.
I think it's a generalization, but it makes sense, and maybe it loses some of its validity only as you get more specific with certain situations. There are certain situations where succeeding is going to provide you with more information or um, more juice to move you forward than a failure. But I think generally speaking, failure teaches us more possibly than success. You're correct, because maybe when we succeed, we just get these like this happiness, or like, okay, I reward dopamine, great, or now I feel safe because I got out of danger, serotonin, great. So um, what are these things that we need to do and outline in order to make that happen?
Can you be more specific?
Um, how do you know that you are um, right when you assess yourself, even in that context of I've failed? These are the things I need to do in order to be successful next time. How do you know you're correct?
Well, first I try to define the goal in such a way that the outcome is objective. I can objectively evaluate the outcome. That relates to SMART goals. I don't want to have some kind of vague definition of a goal, such as like be better at singing. That's sort of now, to some extent, that's actually pretty easy to tell, but it's still not as objective as practicing for so long, for so many minutes, increasing my volume because I can use a lot of microphones or sensors to measure that. Um, so you just want to be able to measure what you're doing, and then if your goal is using the same units of measurement, it's pretty easy to qualitatively or quantitatively compare the two. However, I recognize that a lot of endeavors are not so easy to quantify. They're not so objective, and that's why you have to hone your senses. You need to be a better judge of quality, so that you can do something and judge for yourself whether it's a success or failure. That might be why a lot of life or a lot of learning is so subjective. There's no one who can really tell you in a mathematical way this is absolutely correct or this is absolutely wrong. There's so much nuance. There's so many shades of gray, more than 50, that we're talking about here. So yeah, like people have to develop their own sense of right and wrong, and then follow that, and hopefully it takes them where they want to go.
They can refer to our episode that we recorded earlier on purpose and self-awareness and that connection and how it allows you to define a value system. Maybe if they need even more inputs for that process, they can listen to our self-authoring statements or conversations. And then we're going to continue trying to, and I believe successfully, find guests who offer their own subjective viewpoints, because we do a pretty good job, I believe, of being objective about some of these things, making it simple, and then allowing the stage to do the rest, or allowing the talent to do the rest once we've created that ground floor. So to the people listening, if you feel like you have things to say, like if we said something and you're like, oh, light bulb, if I was there, I would have said that, send it to us or make it a comment and then try to get on the show. Just we'll get a better way of doing that, to where we can just get your information and like when you're available. And if we can't make it a true Telos podcast episode with you and I and the guest, then I'll just do it, or you can do it if you have availability. But we want to get as many opinions and perspectives as possible. Unique perspectives are magic.
You know, breaking the fourth wall here, like Reuben, uh, I I think my role or our role is presenting this general framework, a simple general framework for understanding these fundamental concepts about life. Now,
Hmm.
we recognize that many people may have different theories, different ideas. Hopefully, it will neatly fit within our framework. And that's been our experience so far. People from various perspectives or places in life are saying pretty much the same thing that we are, just different words. Um, if you have if you want to contribute, if you want to say something, if you want to join the podcast, like that's or be a guest on the podcast, like that's something that we are amenable to. We're
Hmm.
totally happy to hear new viewpoints. It's only going to improve us and expand our minds, which is hopefully what we're doing for you as well. I said that there's at least one more topic I wanted to discuss before we end this, and that's Kaizen, or the eternal white belt mentality. Just what do you think about that? I think I said Joe Rogan has probably talked about that. Lex Fridman and other famous podcasters have talked about it. But why is that such a valuable perspective?
Because of that word perspective, your perspective is different every single day. And you have to realize that you yourself, whether you're changing in a positive or negative way, which is kind of up to you and your ability to perceive that. Um, you are a constantly evolving thing and a learner that it needs to keep learning, to make any sort of progress or even have maintenance. And we've said before that there's no true objective maintenance. There's just maybe some things that we can maintain about our lives. So when you understand that, just saying that and believing it to be true about your life, you're starting the process of Kaizen, or the infinite white belt, in the sense that even when I'm a stage 20 black belt, like I still have to remember my white belt progressions.
Hmm.
If I don't, then am I really a level 20 black belt? Probably not, right? Like you would get your belt taken away if you were tested, um, or if there were rules and stuff like that. If you're making your own belt, then it's up to you to do that. But that system, that apprenticeship system, is one that has been shown to work when it's done well, and when it's a combination of the student and the master figuring things out, like Karate Kid, wax on, wax off, all the different little tenets and parables that we can take from that movie. But then you would ask maybe the teacher at the end of the movie, what they learned, and you could, or they could describe the things that they learned from the student, not only from the student, but they learned from analyzing their own coaching, um, analyzing the relationship as a whole. There's things that the coach is always doing, even the master is always doing, that the student does. They just have a different vantage point. They can maybe hold all these different thoughts in their mind at once. They understand what they did wrong or right. They understand what the student did wrong or right, and then all the other things that go into it and form this box or this video game that these two people were dancing in.
Mm-hmm. I think in order for us to change, we need to consent to the process. If we are not willing to change, it's not going to happen. Ben was saying earlier that play is like the most sincere or the most fundamental way to interact with the universe. I may be paraphrasing. I'm interpreting that as meaning that if you're playing, that is when you are most predisposed to learn from your failure. It's like you're in this positive, you have this positive mood, you are enjoying yourself. So even if you trip over a rock or you do something wrong, you're just going to embrace it. You're happy. This is like you're so willing to grow and change and adapt. But if you're upset, if you're uncomfortable, that's when you're hesitant and you start closing your mind to these possibilities. When you're a beginner, when you're a student, you are like a fertile field. Like nothing has been planted in you, and you are just ready to accept something. And that's where you see transformation. That's where you see growth. Like crops will sprout from you. But if you are prideful in your knowledge, if you are arrogant or haughty, that's you just don't care. And then you don't want to expose yourself to anything new, and as a consequence you fossilize your existence, your being, and you die, intellectually, spiritually, whatnot. So being that eternal white belt or being that eternal student allows you to be young in a metaphorical sense. It allows you to just always have the right attitude to experience the fullness of life and learn as much as you can from it. And what you'll learn is very beautiful and profound. So this can only improve your life and your perception of it.
Now we want everyone to close their eyes and imagine what it was like to be born, and then believe that if they just act like a baby every once in a while, their life will improve. Yeah, but babies are dumb, bro. Babies are weak. Babies can't even like walk very well or like do anything. But so why is a baby somebody that we can learn from?
It's their willingness to learn. It's because babies can learn a language. I know you're just joking, and maybe the
Yeah,
itself is facetious, but babies learn languages in a couple years.
it's impressive. Yeah,
Learn how to walk. Babies learn how to use the restroom. So, their
yeah.
their capacity to learn is astonishing. It's like their brain is definitely designed for that, and at a certain point, we lose that ability. Um, yes, like I recognize that babies are not as smart as grown adults, but truly, like we could, if we could learn like they could, we would be many times smarter than we actually are.
My buddy taught me a chant: Sa ta na ma. Um, birth, life, death, rebirth. And it doesn't have to be literal, but the sense that you chant that, you understand that this process is going to require um, that in a, not in a real way, but in a metaphorical way, in the sense that each morning I wake up, I am rebirthed, I live, I go to sleep, it's my death, I'm rebirthed in the morning. Or let's say it's you just going from soft work to hard work. I'm going to set my Pomodoro timer. It's going to click, 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 click. And that is my life. And then I rebirth into the next set of things that I would like to do. Was my death a failure? No, it was a stopping point. You know, this arena or this box that I've set within the video game is now moving over here, or I'm stepping into a different part of the box. I think babies do that instinctually, animals do it instinctually, and then we develop this critical mind, and we forget about some of the benefits to just being instinctual, if you will, or intuitive, but not losing our analytical mind, having both. So having the analytical mind of the master that teaches wax on, wax off, having some of the naivete of the student and the willingness to fail, and the plasticity of a baby. Can we combine all of that at the same time? Maybe not into the same person that we're presenting right now, but at different stages of our life or different stages of our day, that's going to be required of us. Going for a walk, right? It doesn't have to be, let me do all my emails while I'm walking. I can take myself for a walk, and I'm actually walking a dog, right? I joke, it's like taking my dog for a walk, but I don't have a dog. It's what can I see, right? How many different openings to new thoughts can I experience, and do it in an intuitive way or an instinctual way, and not an analytical way.
I'm going to attempt to connect a lot of dots here. So we talked about purpose. What is a good purpose that everyone can have? This may not be your highest purpose, but still, this should probably be your purpose. Be a better human being, right? That's a direction, that's a trajectory. And we can be productive by working in that direction for an extended period of time. We've established this in previous podcasts. Now, as we are moving towards this destination, towards this goal of being a better person, we will very likely fail. In fact, we've predicted that this is going to be inevitable. So how do we fail without hurting ourselves, or without destroying ourselves? It's by safely practicing or managing risk. It's by progressively, or it's about identifying like stops in our route, intermediate points where we can reflect and consider all the progress we've made and how we can more efficiently reach our final destination. Then there's progressive change. It's like every single step that you take, you are closer towards your goal. And at a certain point, if not the final point, it will be noticeable to everyone that you have done something incredible, that you are now a better person. But the journey doesn't end there, right? Because we should be eternal white belts or eternal students. We should have this mindset of always being better. It's like that's a relative term, right? So who I am today is not like, I may be at some level today, but I could be at a higher level tomorrow. And so I can always be better. No matter how good of a person I am, I can always be better. So when I reach that final destination, in reality, there's still another destination for me to go to. So this gives me just an endless number of goals for me to pursue, and that allows me to constantly adapt, constantly learn, constantly enjoy this evolutionary process. That is perhaps what they mean when they say it's not the destination, it's the journey. Because if you are good at this and you understand the drama of it, this is a really beautiful story. This is the story about human life, being confronted by challenges. First, identifying something valuable, running after it, being confronted with challenges, overcoming it, and repeating. Birth, life, death, rebirth. So I think that's really cool. I hope, like, I've at least motivated myself to try to be better, be more serious about this. And if anyone else feels the same, that's cool, and just let us know.
Man, I think I'm definitely on that wave, and every time we have this conversation, not only is it motivating, but it's also, I'm sitting here like, we're doing the thing, man. There's, I think Joe Rogan talks about how like these conversations have just made him such a more intelligent person. He still claims that he's an idiot, and there are things that are idiotic that we both do, even the smartest people on the planet can still realize that, you know, there might be some brilliant things going on up in this head, but I still am a human being, and there are still so many limitations. Starting with the fact that we're squishy, and you could take this pin and poke it through my eye, and nope, I can't see anymore. Like there are a lot of limitations and a lot of ways for us to fail. But if you keep in mind what you said, who cares? No, you should care, but you define how much and what you do about it.
We are attempting to articulate a worldview, an operating system, so to speak, for confronting the adversary, which is this world. Life is not a cakewalk. It is difficult. It is hard. For some, it is almost an insurmountable foe. And so I think it's only right that we try to provide the tools necessary to have a fighting chance. So maybe this is not the most persuasive or profound or intelligent thing that anyone has ever said. I think that's fine. But if it, if it helps anyone, including Reuben and me, right? Like we're not always just trying to be selfless here. In fact, we care more about our our own self-interest, right? That's the real reason we're doing this. We enjoy having these conversations. So if we are, better prepared to be to achieve our goals as a consequence of these conversations, I determine this to be a success. So we're not failing here. We may make mistakes. Those in isolation can be characterized as failures, but the overall effort, the overall endeavor of that is this podcast, I think is a great success so far.
My closing statement is the box, right? So if we are thinking outside the box, you first have to define said box, and then if you keep expanding the box, what was once outside the box is now within the box, and if you keep going, the box goes away.
Mm-hmm. All right, then. It's nice talking to you, Reuben.
I was going to make the Zoom box go away. That would have been epic. It was good talking to you too.